Hi, and welcome to CryptoBiography. I'm your host, Brandon Starr, and this is episode 133. It's entitled The Imp, and it is going to be part of the Connections continuity, which I don't know, I'm starting to say that now. I didn't know there was even going to be a continuity when I started, doing the fiction writing for this, for this podcast. But it turns out, like, I keep coming time and again to this sort of this particular genre, which clearly is all happening inside the same world. So I hope you enjoy it, and here we go. I'm telling you, we can't hide this one. We've made sure they've stayed out of the media before. Yeah, but he's already in the media. Shit. Their feet continued down the long hallway until they could no longer be heard. This could be our time. Our time. They can't hide him. We can be real again, known again. Nobody's ever known us. Our kind, you know what I mean. You think he's our kind? She stopped and looked at him. Maybe not our kind, but special, our kind in that way. Yeah, maybe. They fell into silence and did not talk again until their food was cold and the room was almost too dark to see. The eyes of a great many people were on their screens that night, as the show promised a superhuman appearance. Perhaps more would have tuned in if they had known that this was not poetic exaggeration, but a very truthful description. However, the people who had been discussing him were, of course, among those watching. The interviewer started the show with a calm, reassuring smile. She was wearing a jacket and skirt ensemble that was meant to be taken seriously. Her brown hair was cropped at the shoulder, and her makeup was designed to be both subtle and yet immediately visible. Good evening. I will be talking with someone tonight who may change what we think of as human. This person may as well have just stepped out of the pages of a comic book. Some things simply change the way we look at the universe around us. The first picture of Earth as seen from space, the theory of relativity, the germ theory. Often these things are scientific discoveries. I'm not sure tonight's guest can be called one of those, but I'm equally unsure that he cannot. Please be warned that his appearance can be considered unusual at the very least, gruesome at worst. However, we have been assured by him that, however painful his appearance looks to us, he is in no pain or even discomfort. Though he has a name, he claims he is dropping it in favor of an identity. Why will become apparent when you meet him. Here at Total News Network, we take claims like these very seriously. We've had this man tested to see if his claims hold up. They do, and you will be shown footage of how he came to that conclusion. But first, let us meet our guest. He calls himself... The camera switched over to a curtain, and what could only be described as a man appeared. Impervious Man. The man looked as though he had been flayed. Red, raw skin was all that was visible on his body. It was shiny, as though wet. Even his eyelids had apparently been stripped away to fleshy flaps, though calm, brown eyes looked out from them. There was no hair, as well as no skin on his head, nor any hair of any kind visible. Despite what looked like a condition that should cause nothing but massive pain, he wore clothing, a collared shirt, and slacks, with apparent comfort. He stepped through and took the few steps to the interviewer. Hello, Denise. Please call me Imp, or the Imp, for short. Thanks. Impervious Man makes a mouthful. Imp laughed. It does, doesn't it? Denise waved to a chair opposite the one she was standing beside. Please, have a seat. The Imp sat, and Denise followed suit. First things first, Denise said. Why on earth do you sit there apparently comfortably, looking like a more painful, slim Goodbody? The Imp laughed. Well, the simple answer is, I don't really know. No one does. I haven't been like this very long, less than 2 years, and I've been examined by doctors of many kinds. So, since I can't tell you why, at least let me tell you what. Please do, Denise said, leaning forward to show her interest. I'm 20 years old. This started when I was 18. I got run over by my mom in her car. Denise made a small noise of surprise. Don't worry. She just ran over my foot. It didn't even hurt. So little that I didn't even take off my shoe to check it. I just figured it had somehow been balanced so the weight wasn't on that tire or something. Anyway, later that night I took off my socks and I saw that the foot that had gotten run over had the skin scraped right off of it. But there was no blood. Instead, my foot looked raw, red, and bloody, exactly as my face looks now. Stunned, I checked the sock, and it did look like my skin had been violently scraped off, and much of it stuck to the inside of my sock, yet not a drop of blood. The imp leaned back and shrugged as if to say it was no big deal. Denise, however, was agape. The imp smiled. With his normal, even teeth, it made his crimson face look even stranger. Well, I was curious and more than a little creeped out, but since it didn't hurt, I didn't run straight to my mom or a doctor. I assumed it was some sort of thing where the skin gets scraped, it was starting to scab over, and it would be back to normal in a few days. Boy, was I wrong. Instead of becoming normal, the skin on my foot stayed the same, and the area around it started to peel back, making the red area larger. That was one thing. But then I saw that my fingertips had become raw and red as well. I freaked out and showed my mom, who also freaked out. We went to the doctor. Well, doctors. None of them could tell me anything. Nothing seemed to be wrong with me, other than how my skin looked. They couldn't fathom how nothing could be wrong, since the skin is meant to protect from the world, from minor damage, from bacteria, and so on. The areas of redness became greater and greater. Eventually they started appearing on my eyelids, and my elbows, my butt, and so on. Basically, the thinner the skin, the more it touched other things or moved, the quicker it went away. Do you have any of your skin left? Denise asked, interrupting, but clearly unable to stop herself. A bit, behind my ears, and in the middle of my lower back. They almost never get touched, aren't moved around much, and in the case of my back, it's very thick and strong. But those are going too, and really I expect to be entirely skinless within months. I didn't know what to do. I had just graduated high school when the process had started, so I canceled my acceptance to the local college I had applied to and just became a hermit while I figured out what was going on. I admit I became pretty despondent for a while. Not exactly depressed, that's more of a neurological thing, but just bummed out. I also noticed that my sense of touch was becoming less acute. This also upset my mental state, as it meant I knew even less about what was happening to me. One day, I decided to see what happened if I hurt myself. I went to the kitchen, took a knife, and rather dramatically pulled it across my forearm. Well, nothing happened. The knife was good and sharp, but it didn't cut me in the least. That's when I started to piece things together. My body was becoming tougher. Nothing could hurt it. But on the other hand, my skin wasn't dying at all. What we think of as skin is all dead, of course. You don't see the living skin normally. But since my skin wasn't dying off anymore, wasn't even capable of dying or being hurt, it wasn't replacing my epidermis. So eventually my epidermis just went away. He shrugged and sat back in his chair. But you have no hair, and I think your fingernails are gone too. But those are created by living cells. I can't rightly explain that. I assume the follicles are still alive. But hair and nails are made from protein, and maybe whatever makes my cells stronger is blocking that process. So you think you're invulnerable? Denise asked, almost in a whisper. I don't know what my limitations are. I don't know if I'm going to die eventually from this change. But it seems the living cells of my body are somehow stronger and nearly immune to change or damage. I've tried breaking my bones, beyond the car incident, and I haven't been able to. Also, because my bones, my tendons and joints, and my muscles all seem to be impervious to harm, I can push them far beyond what normal people can. You can't punch through a car window without suffering serious harm. I can. And you know I can be shot without harm. Denise nodded. She looked a little pale, even underneath her stage makeup. Yes, Please, run the footage. The screen changed to a series of shots of the impervious man with members of the Total News Network attempting to harm him. He was smiling placidly in each one. They beat him with a baseball bat to no effect. They tried to crush his hand in a vice. They put gasoline on one arm and lit it on fire. They shot him point blank with a .45 pistol. Nothing changed. Nothing so much as affected his red, shiny skin. The scene ended and the shot returned to the interview. Imp, do you have anything else to say at this time? Denise asked. Sure. I intend to have multiple medical and other scientists study my body, partly to see if there's any way I can return to normal, but also to see if there's anything they can learn from my physiology. Perhaps something to make bulletproofing better, or cure osteoporosis. Who knows what might come from this strange effect on me? That sounds like a wonderful idea, Denise commented. Thanks, but it isn't all to be selfless. I don't want to be kidnapped by some foreign power to be studied by them. So I'm doing it right away and publicly. Also, I figure I won't be able to get any normal job, have any normal career, and I don't want to hire myself out as a freak. So if I can hire my services out for companies to study me, to make better products, or have the chance to, I figure it's win-win. Denise nodded. I expect that won't take all your time. What else will you be doing? Imp shrugged. I expect to be studied long and hard for a few years. I would like to keep that period as short as possible, make a good nest egg, and essentially retire early. I don't need a huge income to live how I want. I'll just need enough to live off of interest. Pretty smart choice for someone your age. Well, I don't know if I'll be able to find a romantic partner who will be able to accept me. And with my job prospects limited, I've got to grab this as an opportunity. Well, I've got to say, I'm impressed. Denise held her hand out, and the imp, after a pause, shook it. Denise, to her credit, did not cringe or show any other negative reaction to his touch. When they finished shaking hands, her palm was visible to the camera. It had not the slightest trace of anything unusual on it. Not sticky, wet, or anything, despite how it looks, is it? The imp remarked, a wistful smile crossing his bloody face. Not at all, Denise said. The segment ended, and went to commercial. And that's the story. I think we might see the imp later, but I'm not sure if I will continue the story immediately or if we might just return to him later on. I do think he's an interesting character with an interesting set of circumstances. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any comments or questions about this episode or previous episodes, CryptoBiography@gmail.com, or hit us up on Facebook or Twitter. And thanks for listening. Words and music, copyright 2019, CryptoBiography LLC, all rights reserved. Characters and events are fictional, fictionalized, or satirical.